So this is not directly related to climate, but considering AI is now everywhere and we want to think about how to use it for weather and climate predictions, for improving models, for producing climate services, as well as worry about how much energy and water AI will gobble up. So how to make AI itself sustainable other than having AI serve sustainability. So in that sense, this is important. Are the internet and AI affecting our memory? We'll see that this has been discussed before. There's something called digital amnesia, the Google effect, and so on. So having information so readily available, how does it affect our own ability to collect information and store it and remember it? Remember the days, I mean, if you're young, you probably don't, but for some of us who grew up even without a landline at home, then got landline at some point, we used to remember numbers. And now with cell phones, we don't remember anybody's telephone numbers, right? We just use the search or whatever to dig up the numbers. So it's an interesting topic. Search engines, GPS maps, and other tech can alter our ability to learn and remember. Now scientists are working on what AI might do before we get AI into our lives as ubiquitously as GPS. You know, when you drive around, you just use Google Map or some other map to drive without necessarily paying attention to where you are making a turn or anything. I'm really bad at that, so I don't remember where I went and came back if I used the maps. That was not the case before, right? So Adrian Ward had been driving confidently around Austin, Texas for 9 years until last November when he started getting lost. Ward's phone had been acting up and the Apple Maps had stopped working. Suddenly Ward couldn't even find his way to the home of a good friend, making him realize how much he had relied on technology in the past. I just instinctively put on the map and do what it says, said Ward. Ward's experience echoes a common complaint: the internet is undermining our memory. This fear has shown up in several surveys over the past few years and even led one software firm to coin the term digital amnesia that I just mentioned for the experience of forgetting information, because a digital service has stored it there instead of in your head, worrying about storing it in your head. Last year, Oxford University Press announced that its word of the year was brain rot, the deterioration of someone's mental state caused by consuming trivial online content. Slightly different, but still, the search process works in a way that it keeps on giving you information about what you searched, if it is MAGA or conservative politics, and so on. So there is no way to mix because they feed you what you are looking for instead of figuring out whether you are just looking for it because you are surprised by it, you don't agree with it, and so on. Anyway, what you will see out there is all kinds of dire predictions about digital amnesia, and we are gonna lose our memory because we don't use it anymore, says Daniel Schechter, who studies memory at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In fact, various studies paint a more complicated picture. Some do suggest that internet and digital technologies impair or otherwise alter performance on specific learning and memory tasks. The example we saw, people who use GPS devices to navigate seem worse at recalling routes, for instance. Ward, who is a psychologist at the University of Texas at Austin, has found that Googling information gives people an inflated sense of their own knowledge. But there is no convincing evidence that the technology is having a broader detrimental effect on memory, researchers say. Claims such as Google is making us stupid are overstatements, says Elizabeth Marsh, a memory researcher at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. Good news, right? So we use it, we feel more knowledgeable than we actually are by using ChatGPT and Google search, but it doesn't really make us smarter, but also doesn't make us stupider. So the revolution in artificial intelligence is raising a host of questions. Large language models that power tools such as ChatGPT are rapidly being incorporated into search engines and the other software, which means they're becoming part of everyday experience. for most people, and they could affect learning and memory in more profound ways than conventional internet searching. This whole ChatGPT thing is another level of technology that's really different from just typing into a Google browser. What's the capital of Madagascar, says Marsh. So when you do simple searches from Google, obviously you get quick answers, but now Google itself has added the AI feature, and it gives you additional information for questions even as specific as what's the capital of Madagascar. It might start telling you the history of the continent, geological, cultural and linguistic and so on. Researchers have suggested, for example, that chatbots and other AI tools could make people cognitively lazy and even seed their minds with realistic false memories. Already generative AI is being used to create dead bots, digital avatars of dead people who can say things that the living person never said, before dying. It's a kind of reassembling a past that we never experienced, says Andrew Hoskins, who studies AI and memory at the University of Edinburgh, UK. Okay. So the Google effect that we already mentioned, people have been using technology to aid their memories for centuries, from the printing press to photographs and video cameras. But the idea that the internet is eroding human memory gained ground after a 2011 study by psychologist Betsy Sparrow, who was then at Columbia University in New York City, and others. In the first of a series of experiments, they reported that people presented with difficult questions instinctively thought about the internet and computers, and if they were itching to search for answers. Sorry, I read it wrong. In the first of a series of experiments, they reported that people presented with difficult questions instinctively thought about the internet and computers as if they were itching to search for the answers. In other tests, participants seemed to be worse at remembering trivia statements they had typed into a computer if they had been told that the machine would save rather than erase their notes. They often remembered the folder they had saved facts in better than the information itself. So you collect something, you save it, and you know where you saved it, so you don't have to remember the whole thing. You can always open it up again. The study popularized the idea of Google effect, that people are using the internet as an external memory bank and therefore weakening their own, so some extension of your brain as a Google Drive, let's say. But some researchers later questioned the reliability of these results. A study in 2018 failed to replicate the first experiment in Sparrow's 2011 study. Differences that Sparrow argued could be explained. Then, a second attempt to replicate the same experiment also failed to mirror the original results. Google effects are plausible and have garnered significant attention, says Guido Hesselmann, a psychologist at Berlin Psychological University, who did the second replication attempt, but he adds that a higher standard should be applied when researching these ideas. We know that there have been a lot of issues in these kind of subjective psychological studies, but nonetheless, Ward was a PhD student with one of Sparrow's co-authors, Daniel Wegener, at Harvard University, and remains convinced by the 2011 study. The results fit with a widely accepted concept called transactive memory, that Wegener proposed in the 1980s. Transactive memory. This says that people lessen the burden of remembering information by sharing it with others, a spouse or a colleague, for example, and use the collective brain to create a memory bank. So you can always say, honey, do you remember what I said? And then get it back, right? So instead of remembering yourself. When other party in the transaction is the internet, however, we are potentially relieved of having to know much at all. Why put it in my head when I have a smartphone in my pocket? And sometimes searching Google is faster than searching your own mind, Ward says. This is a form of cognitive offloading in which people use anything from lists to calendars to phones to lessen the demands on their brains. Some of the strongest data to support cognitive offloading, says Kerry Morwedge, who studies decision-making at Boston University, Massachusetts, are from a 2010 study of GPS navigation. Participants in a driving simulator traveled a route either with or without the assistance of GPS. Then they were asked to drive the same route from memory. Those who had used GPS were as bad as at navigating as people who had never traveled the route at all. So the GPS made a successful travel plan, but you couldn't remember it, you couldn't recall it. Later study of virtual navigation skills suggested that spatial memory of people who use GPS extensively deteriorated faster than that of those who used it less. In a similar vein, a few studies have suggested that taking photos can reduce memories of the photographed objects, at least in certain situations. Well, think about that. Cognitive offloading makes adaptive sense, researchers say, because it frees up limited brain bandwidth to attend to other business. A study by researchers at the University of California, Santa Cruz demonstrated this effect. They asked students to study a document of words and then randomly assigned some to save it. Those who saved the first file were better able to memorize words in a second file. Okay, so you study the document of words and then randomly assigned some to save it. So do you save it without reading, or do you read it, save it, and remember more of it, especially when you read another file with the same words? Other studies, I hope that's what they did, those who saved the first file were better able to memorize words in a second file because they had already seen it. Other studies support the idea that people rely on the internet as a surrogate memory, so much so that they confuse it with their own. In Ward's study, he asked people to answer a series of trivia questions using Google or on their own. Those who used Google later rated themselves as having more confidence in their own memory on average than those who didn't use the search engine. So you search it, you answer it, and a few minutes later you're convinced that you remembered it yourself and Google was not a helper. Right? There's also a term called kleptomnesia that I like, where you listen to someone. It happens a lot for plagiarism, for example. You attend the talk, you listen to somebody saying something, and you think, wow, that's a good idea. And 3 days later, you have thought more about the idea and think, this is what I came up with. So this happens a lot. Okay? So searching for answers, it seemed, didn't remind them of their ignorance. It made them think that the online knowledge had been theirs all along. That's what we mean. We just transpose the answer into our own head, thinking, I did that. I think less of our knowledge is internal and more of it stored externally, and we are accessing it and feeling like it's our own. Ward says. I'm going to read all of this because it's kind of interesting story, and usually you don't want to read the whole thing, but since this is not so much a technical paper, it's a feature from Nature or wherever I picked it up from. Oops, I forgot to put the DOI, which I will do later. Actually, I should just tell you. AI. I save all these files because I find them interesting. So here we go. This appeared in Nature. Let me just cut and paste right now. Not the way to do things, but I'm just doing this for fun and you are getting it for free, so I hope you don't mind. Right, so it appeared just now in February. My computer has become so bad. The mouse pad is not working anymore. I need to put so much pressure. Okay, so yeah, I'm just mumbling to myself here, but I've seen other podcasters do it as well, so I suspect we are just normalizing this idea of recording with talking random things. So Nature, volume 638, February 6, 2025, page 626 to page X, which we'll see here. Okay, so that's what Ward said. So Marsh says false confidence inspired by searching might be one reason that you are so surprised if you later can't remember some of the things. So you thought, oh, I remembered it, but you don't remember that you actually Googled it. This effect might lead people to overestimate their own knowledge. Researchers don't know yet whether these types of misconceptions could worsen now that search emerging engines provide AI generated summaries that at the top of the results, search results. So you search for something, there's nice blurb, they make it the summary so succinct and salient that you read it and you think, wow, I understood it, and next day you think I knew it, as opposed to I read it and learned it, right? So information overload can matter in this. Schachter, who reviewed studies on technology use and memory in 2022, says that taken together there is convincing research from studies so far that the internet and technology can affect memory performance for specific tasks such as remembering a route or photograph them. But so far there is very little evidence, he says, that these technologies are causing a broader decline in memory, which is again good news. Sometimes searching Google is faster than searching your own mind, as we said. So the immense amounts of information that people are bombarded with today could also create perception that memory is worsening. So you don't know everything and you don't follow everything. So when somebody else says something, you think, wow, I saw it, but I forgot about it, right? So Marsh adds, I do think we are trying to remember more than we used to. She says, if you are trying to keep track of more information, you will probably experience more of those oops moments, so that you think I'm maybe forgetting more and more. So although researchers debate how much of the internet affects memory and learning, some say that the rise of AI tools could have bigger impact. So now we are conjecturing about what may happen once AI becomes all ubiquitous. But studies to investigate this are only just starting to trickle through, says Thali Sharat, a neuroscientist at the University College of London. We know almost nothing, she says. So researchers do agree that in theory the effects of generative AI tools such as ChatGPT could be different from those of previous memory aids like Google and so on, but we still have to wait. So potentially unreliable external memory source and can raise the risks that people could incorporate false information into their memories, including that I already knew it, ChatGPT had nothing to do with. Because writing can help people to think deeply and come up with original insights, say scholars, students who offload these processes to AI risk not only not learning those skills. There is a lot of fear in academia that our students will just use it to write papers and learn nothing because it's the ultimate offloading, says Marsh. So in other words, typically when I grew up and became a scientist and started writing papers, you would read lots of things and summarize it and place your own research in that context. In addition to formulating your research based on previous knowledge, which is unavoidable, sometimes you have eureka moments, but they are still based on what's already there. So when you do that, you are doing a very different task than asking ChatGPT to write an essay for you. So as a teacher, when I assign homeworks, I obviously have to see how much of help was obtained from ChatGPT, and now we are going to have software to see whether things were lifted from ChatGPT and so on. So Hoskins says that AI algorithms are already changing how we and further generations will remember the past. For instance, Google Photos uses AI to automatically curate people's personal photos into events or memories that could influence how they recall their own lives. This happens all the time. It's if you have Google Photos app, every few days or literally every other day, it'll keep saying we created a memory for you, a collage, or they pick some based on some random algorithms, but it also learns from what you do, so it chooses what it thinks you prefer. A more extreme example is AI generated digital avatars constructed from photos, videos and audio recordings, which allow families to have conversations with loved ones after they have died. It sounds extraordinary, but it's what people are doing routinely now, Hoskins says. Some firms are offering families the option to generate these dead bots before a relative dies, so that you just freeze life into these videos and podcasts, including voice, everything, so that you can remember the person or even have conversations as if they haven't died at all. So to some researchers, the potential that generative AI could influence learning and memory highlight the enormous influence of the handful of companies behind them, such as Google and OpenAI. It's very easy to code ChatGPT in a certain way that potentially will impact the way people think and their beliefs, Sharad says, and that's a little bit scary. What's clear is that researchers are only just starting to study these issues surrounding AI, and understanding any impacts is tough given the pace of technological development. It's really hard to study, says Sharad, as AI is changing so fast. Okay, so why do I put it into climate podcast? Well, because directly or indirectly, all these things matter about how you think about climate change, its role in your life from the past or the future, what it may happen, or what kind of information you glean from the internet about climate change, what kind of ideas you support. So when you see somebody like Trump get elected and do some different ways of, do things in a very different way about climate change and everything else, then you know that we are all being affected by technologies in many positive and negative ways, and people may be feeling left out or unskilled or unsafe, insecure, anxious, whatever. So how is AI going to add to all that, and how is that going to affect overall human behavior towards climate, pro-environmental behavior, climate change, sustainability, collective action, sustaining the commons, and so on. So it's all going to become part of the solution as well as the challenge, right? So that's why I kind of like these sorts of articles. Plus, they're interesting anyways, right? Okay, so see you in the next topic, which is again about Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. Another paper claiming that evidence doesn't support the idea that it's slowing down. And this is important because there has been lots of news and alarm about the slowing down of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. So see you there.